Is Drain attribute any good? If we compare it to Damage attribute, it has 1/8 of the cost. 100 points of Damage attribute on touch costs 80 magicka. Meanwhile, 100 points of Drain attribute on touch costs only 10 magicka. But you must keep in mind that Drain is only temporary, so you'll need a high magnitude and a high duration to make full use of this. The cost is actually fairly reasonable, especially when compared with spells like Drain Magicka. 100 points of Drain attribute for 10 seconds on touch costs 55 magicka. 100 points of Frost damage on touch costs 50 magicka, so we finally found a temporary debuffing spell that isn't horribly expensive compared to direct damage. It is at 14 seconds that Drain attribute finally costs the same as Damage attribute for 1 second. But if instead you spread the effect of Damage attribute over 10 seconds, you can make a spell that is actually cheaper and not temporary. 10 points of Damage attribute on touch for 10 seconds costs only 44 magicka. My opinion: if you want the attribute to be lowered immediately and it's okay if it's temporary, you should use Drain attribute. If, on the other hand, you want the attribute to be permanently lowered and you can survive while the high duration low magnitude spell runs its course, you should use Damage attribute. If you want to know which attribute is actually worth draining, I'll suggest a video for that near the end of the video, but for now let's continue to Oblivion. In Oblivion, Drain attribute is a bit harder to access. It's not really available as a spell, so your only way to get it for the spell-making altar is to get a power that includes Drain attribute as a side effect. There are 4 ways to get such a power. First, be an orc and you'll automatically get Berserk. Second, completing repairing the orrery lets you get a greater power based on phases of the moons. Each of these greater powers also contains Drain attribute. Thirdly, the lesser power, Blessing of Talos, that you get during the Knights of the Nine questline also has such a disadvantage. And finally, apparently getting Feldew withdrawal during the Shivering Isles questline also makes this effect available in spellmaking. Personally, I think completing repairing the orrery is your best bet here, if you weren't already an orc. It's a relatively quick quest where you just need to brutally murder 4 bandit camps that are quite close to each other. As for the cost, let's compare Drain attribute to other spells. All the costs I'm about to talk about are for 75 destructions, so the cost may be higher or lower for you if your destruction is different. Drain attribute 100 points for 1 second on touch costs 12 magicka. In comparison to that, 100 points of fire damage on touch costs 136 magicka. Meanwhile, 100 points of Drain health on touch costs 16 magicka. But while Drain attribute looks quite cheap here, we need to look at a longer duration. Drain is a temporary effect that stops doing anything as soon as it runs out, so a 1 second duration probably won't be useful. The only exception to this is Drain health, which actually kills if the enemy health is less or equal to the magnitude of the spell. 100 points of Drain attribute for 10 seconds on touch costs 127 magicka at 75 destruction. Which, if you remember, is still cheaper than 100 points of fire damage on touch. But while you may want a longer duration, you don't actually have to use a 100 magnitude. A magnitude of 50 or lower may serve as a good enough debuff, while also being cheaper to cast. This goes for Morrowind too. Damage attribute cannot be used in spellmaking in Oblivion because, unlike Drain, there are no greater or lesser powers that would allow you to access it. While I could make a comparison by adding such a spell with console commands, you could never actually use it. So it doesn't exist as an alternative in spell form, but you can use Damage attribute as a poison. If you want to know which attributes are actually worth lowering, I discussed this in my video about Damage attribute, for both Morrowind and Oblivion. See it here. I hope you liked the video and thanks for watching.